It's good to see everybody here in person. Great to be able to shake a few hands and see some people I haven't seen in a while. Everybody looks good. That means I hadn't seen anybody in a while, so everybody looks good. No, I'm just saying, but it's great to have everybody here. It's also great to have a great number of people on our live stream this afternoon as well. My name is Bill Mearse, and I have the privilege of emceeing this special event. It's a special event for a special man. Our special guest today is Dr. Terry Maness. Dr. Maness, as you know, has been associated with Baylor. I guess officially 44 years, they say, but as a student, it goes back a little further than that. He graduated from Baylor and got his BA and MS from Baylor. I don't talk about years anymore, Terry, because you're the same decade as I am, even though I'm later in the decade. I want to make sure that's clear. And then Indiana University, he got his DBA, and then came back to Baylor to teach. At Hankamer School of Business, he started off as a professor of finance, and he was very successful at that. He was recognized as not only a distinguished professor, but also on multiple occasions as the most popular professor, or popular professor. So that's a great accomplishment. And then he started becoming administration. He became chairman, or the chair of the Department of Finance, Insurance, and Real Estate, the dean of undergraduate programs, and in 1997, as Dean Scott stepped down, Terry became dean of the Hankamer School of Business. And that's where he's been for the last 24 years. Now, Terry steps down officially on July the 1st, so that's a reminder that he can still ruin transcripts between now and the end of the month. So we have to kind of tread a little bit. There's no pictures, there's no, and I won't be calling on stories from the audience. But anyway, please welcome Dr. Terry Maness.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me make, if I go back to my instructor days, my teaching days, I would make a correction to a student who responded with the wrong answer. And Bill, I shouldn't start this out correcting you right off the bat, but I'm not stepping down as dean July 1st. I'm stepping down from dean on July the 29th at 11:59
Okay.
p.m.
So you got an extra month we got to behave.
No, extra day.
An extra, okay, June 29th at 11:59. Okay.
Or June 30th, actually.
Okay, June 30th, all right. Well, thank you for that clarification, Terry. Terry was one of my professors, so I'm used to that. But anyway, but no, it's great. We do really appreciate you coming to Houston and taking time with us today. And I thought we might just start off letting you tell us a little bit about your personal background before you came to Baylor. Because I'm not sure how many of us know a little bit about that personal background.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I'll say a little bit more about this later on in the talk. But having lunch here, we used to have breakfasts here, but this is lunch this time around. But the Baylor Business Network basically started here, and so this is kind of a deja vu kind of event for me to be winding down my career at Baylor, where really this kind of thing started up soon after I became dean. So we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. But let me give a little bit of background. I grew up in Dallas. I have an older brother, Ronnie, and he's 4 years older than me. And so I grew up with a brother as kind of a mentor to me, someone who I looked up to. And then my parents, my mom and dad, they didn't really have a chance to go to college. My mom did finish her high school degree. My dad really never did finish a degree. He ended up one of these that had to go back to the farm to kind of help out on there to make ends meet, and then went into the military. And so neither my brother nor I really had an idea of what professions were out there and that kind of thing. And so as he's getting ready to graduate from high school, looking at colleges, one of the things that I value and value today is the focus my parents had on giving us, my brother and I, an opportunity to do something they didn't have an opportunity to do, and that is to get a college degree. They were determined and dedicated that we would go to college. Now, which college? My mom was the church secretary at our little neighborhood church there in Dallas, and it was a Southern Baptist church. And so the only college she really cared about was Baylor. And as my brother was beginning to look at colleges, I remember him going down to UT to visit campus, and it just so happened that on his way back, he and some friends he went down with stopped off at the Baylor campus. And so when he got back to Dallas, he and my mom were talking, and he said, Mom, comparing those two campuses, really, I just felt more at home at Baylor. And she was so relieved. I mean, that was her dream. It was for her two sons to go to Baylor University because of who Baylor is. And so he ended up coming to Baylor. He was a senior when I arrived as a freshman. So I think because of his mentorship and his leadership in my life, I never really looked at another school to go to, and that was the relief of my mom because, again, she wanted her two sons to go to Baylor and graduate Baylor. So that's kind of how that linked up. We didn't do a big college search like everybody does nowadays, and I don't think that was the norm back then. But who Baylor was and was very important to my family and to us as it ended up. So.
Well, that's great. So you graduate from Baylor, and what pointed you towards academia as a career? And I think it's interesting who influenced you in that direction.
I bet we could go around the audience here and have all kinds of stories about faculty and staff that may have influenced each of you that graduated from Baylor. But I started as a freshman at Baylor University and was headed toward the business school. And it was really during my sophomore year that when I took that first economics course, and there's a new faculty member that had started at Baylor. He was seasoned. He had come from LSU. And he was teaching that first economics course, and I took that course. And I barely escaped. And that convinced me that even though my brother went through the business school, and I think he was an economics and finance major, and he and I both think a lot alike, I thought, man, if this is what business school is like, I'm not going to survive this. So I really, in my sophomore year, left the business school. Not because of that faculty member, but because I just struggled so much through that course. Survived the course, but just barely. So I went over to the College of Arts and Sciences, looked for different opportunities during that sophomore year, and it was really during the summer between my sophomore and junior year that I really, as I was doing my summer job, I was thinking, I didn't find anything that really clicked with me during that searching of that spring semester. And I said, that economics course, that's such a foundational kind of material that no matter what I do, that's something that I ought to know more about. And I dedicated myself that summer, said, I want to go back, I want to take the second course. And I haven't found anything else. And what I'll do is I studied the catalog and talked to an advisor or two. I said, I think what I'll do is if I do well in the second course, the micro-macro combination, if I do well in the second course, what I'll do, I'll major in economics through the College of Arts and Sciences, get a BA degree in economics. And also I can take some business courses as electives, finance and a couple of accounting courses. And I said, I think I'll do it that way. And I don't know what clicked, but things began to work. I think probably maturity helped a lot, but things started beginning to work for me that way, and I did well. And so I was majoring in economics with a heavy concentration in finance. And it was during my senior year that that faculty member that I had in my sophomore year came up to me And he now was chair of the economics department, and that name was Dr. Jim Truitt. And Dr. Truitt comes up to me in my senior year and says, well, Mr. Maness, you're doing quite well. I said, I think he said surprisingly well, but he said, you're doing quite well. And I said, well, Dr. Truitt, really, this is, I really enjoy the material and the like. He said, have you ever thought about graduate school? And I said, graduate school? I said, no. I said, I'm interviewing with banks right now, and I'm, with the finance and economics focus, that seems to make a lot of sense to me. He said, well, you really have done extremely well, and I'd like you to consider staying on as for a graduate degree. And sort of a side story to that, Nancy and I married. We got married halfway through my senior year. She was a junior. And, we had already started talking about how are we going to transition this? Do I go off and work and we have a commuting marriage kind of thing, or what do we do about that? Or does she leave and finish up her degree someplace else? And as I talked with Dr. Truitt, we talked about that, and he said, well, if you stayed on and got a master's in economics, which I'd love for you to do, that would allow your wife to finish up her degree while you're here and then go on with your career. So he said, I really would want you to apply for the graduate program. I did. Got in, probably with some help from him, but again, I was doing well, and proceeded to go through the master's program. And so really, I think that's something that began to lead that way. But as I was finishing up, Bill, as I was finishing up my master's degree, Jim again comes back to me and says, Mr. Maness, what are you planning to do now? I said, well, I got a MS in economics. I've got a lot of finance background. I took some more accounting. I said, banking is still something. He said, have you ever thought about an academic career? Now, what was going through my mind at that moment was some high school teachers that were turning over their grave, hearing somebody talk to me about becoming an educator. High school wasn't my favorite area. But I'd come a long way, and I said, wow, not at all. He said, matter of fact, what I really would like to offer you, I know you're interviewing with some banks, but what I'd like to offer you is an opportunity to stay on after you finish your master's and teach for us as a lecturer for 1 or 2 years and see if an academic career would work for you. And so really it was the mentorship, if you will, and the leadership and the connection with a better faculty member who saw someone, I don't know what he saw in me, but saw someone that said, hey, I'm gonna kind of mentor this person. And Jim kind of took me under his wing, and that kind of led to that career. When I talked to freshman class, I mentioned an academic career because I had no idea. I mean, I knew people were out there in the college classroom teaching, right, but I didn't know what an academic career was. And it was really a Baylor faculty member that began to point me in that direction.
So how many in here had Dr. Truitt for a course? Anybody? Yeah,
there's several.
Yeah, there's several. Yeah, when I was getting my MBA at Baylor, I had Dr. Manus as one of my economics professor. But the most feared course in the MBA program at that time was microeconomics. And Dr. Truitt, Dr. Truitt was the professor. And I tried to be strategic. I took it in the summer at 8 o'clock in the morning. I said, if it's going to be hard, let's be hard for 6 weeks and then and get it over with, right? So I'm at 8 o'clock in the morning, the first day of class, and Dr. Truitt walks in and he goes, hello, my name's Dr. Truitt. Welcome to, and I can't remember the name of the class, economics, whatever. And then he turns around and starts drawing formulas on the board. So anybody who's had Dr. Truitt will relate to that story. You know, a little different style than Terry. So Terry, as a professor, you obviously were a successful professor, recognized as distinguished professor, most popular. What are some of the key characteristics of a successful professor, do you think?
You know, Bill, I really think, and this comes from when I interview faculty members, there's a question that I always ask a recruit, someone we're interviewing for a faculty position. And I asked them, I said, why did you choose an academic career? Why are you in education? And the answer that I'm really, that kind of warms my heart, if you will, or the kind of, that would be indicative of the kind of person that we want to hire, the response would go something like this: because I want to impact lives. And I think back to, again, Jim Truitt and the impact that that faculty member had on me, and I translate that to someone who responds, you know, I chose this career path because I want to have an influence, I want to impact people. Well, also, I think in conjunction with that, we're looking for people that really have a gift for creating knowledge and bringing that into the classroom. And so people who, we're looking for people who are coming from the top schools and they're trained well, and they are able to do really quality research and bring that into the classroom. But at the end of the day, it's really about impacting lives and really bringing on a new group of mentors like I had.
Well, that's great. And how's the role of a professor changed over the last, let's say, 40 years? I hate to use that. I don't like that number, but it's reality.
It's real.
It's where I'm at too. So 40 years. But how has it changed? You
know, I reflect on that, and I really can sum it up in this way. I think, in that profession has changed dramatically over the years that I've been at Baylor, and I see this at other schools too. I mean, it's not just a Baylor phenomenon. But I want to reflect a little bit back on our accrediting agency, our AACSB International agency that accredits business schools worldwide. And we've been accredited since 1960. But as their accreditation standards have changed and have grown, there are three characteristics of a business program and three characteristics of faculty at accredited business schools. And I think this is really critical for Baylor. And that is faculty who, you'll see a business program really form engagement, innovation, and impact. And what you really want to have are faculty who are engaged with students, faculty who are engaged with the profession, with industry, and faculty who can engage students with industry. So engagement has really grown to be an important part of the role of a faculty member. It's not about just sitting back in the classroom and teaching a course, grading papers. It's about really getting those students connected with what they're going to be doing, and themselves staying connected either with the professional world or even with their academic discipline and colleagues at other universities. So engagement, and then impact, doing things that impact, creating a learning environment that impacts a student and provides them better opportunities for careers as they do their interviewing. Impact in terms of the research and professional work that they may be doing, in terms of how does that change? If it's research, it may be creating new knowledge, and how's that new knowledge impacting how business is done? And then really innovation. So impact, engagement, innovation, and we're really expecting our faculty to be innovative, and they're creating a learning environment for the students, but also be innovative in terms of the kind of research that they're doing, and create, again, innovation in the sense of creating new knowledge. So that's a tall order, but I think an appropriate order, because all those things really form what I think to be a premier business program for students, as well as and I think is impactful to alums too from that standpoint.
You know, it's interesting because one of the terms I hear used when it comes to faculty is that we need to have faculty who are entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
You know, and Baylor has one of the top entrepreneurial schools in academia, but you never really think, you know, in old school, you never would think of a professor as being entrepreneurial. But that's really kind of where we're at, and that's what you were describing when you're talking about innovation and image and engagement. It's somebody that's just not in a teaching mode. They're much more than just a teaching mode.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting. That was an interesting term I hear, entrepreneur, in terms of used as faculty. So after being a successful faculty member, your department head, department chair, tell us how you began to migrate towards becoming dean of the business school.
There's, again, it goes back to a similar story, another faculty member, an individual by the name of Richard Scott. When I started my academic career at Baylor in 1977, Richard, who had been on the faculty, was moved into the position of dean of the business school. And Emerson Hinkey had been the previous dean. Some of you in accounting may certainly know the name Emerson Hinkey. Emerson wanted to go back to the faculty and finish out his career at Baylor teaching and writing. He'd written several books. And so Richard came in as dean in the summer of '77 when I started. And those of you who know Richard know there's no stopping Richard. He's ready to grow. He's ready to move things forward. He wants to have impact. And the role of the dean at that point in time when he stepped in was to really oversee the undergraduate program. It wasn't to go out and raise money. It wasn't to go out and build programs. It was to manage the undergraduate program. And so Richard, that didn't fit Richard. And Richard he wanted to build programs. And so he did that for a year. But after that first year, and he and I got acquainted, we had known each other when I was back in school, but I never had him. But he is also a good friend with Jim Truitt. And I think apparently he and Jim had talked. But Richard came to me after my first year on the Baylor faculty and said, Terry, I want to offer you a proposal. He said, I've got a vision, I've got a dream for the business school. He said, I want to go out and build in entrepreneurship was one of the programs he wanted to build. He said, I want to build a business school. I want to grow the business school, and to do so, I need to raise money. I need additional financial resources to do that. So I want to go out and begin to talk with our alums about donating to the business school so we can grow programs. But he said, I can't do that under the certain administrative responsibilities that the dean currently has. So I want to create the role of associate dean for undergraduate programs. And I'm inviting you, I'd like you to serve in that capacity so that I can go out and build the school. So after prayer and talking with my wife, Nancy, and we thought about it, I said, if Richard's going to ask me to do it, those of you who know Richard, you don't turn Richard down. If I said no, he would have come about something else. I don't know what, but he would have come about it a different way. But I said, yes, let me try that. I was new on the job, and I thought, well, this would be a great opportunity to work with him and learn from him. And so I did that for a period of 3 years, from so 78 to about 81, 82, somewhere in that neighborhood. And after the third year, I went back to Richard and I said, Richard, I've done what you've asked. I've structured the program. I've got the office running. And I said, I'm still young in my career. I'd like to go back to the classroom, and I had some projects that I was working on as well. And I said, I'd like to go back to the role of a regular faculty member. And he said, hey, I respect that. I appreciate what you've done. In the meantime, Richard had been out and doing what he was intending to do, raising money and building programs. And I said, I'd like to do that. And he said, well, so I went back to the faculty about 82 or 83, and he brought in another person to be associate dean, I think maybe Kent Gilbreth at that time. And about 85, in 1985, the school had grown so large that he was having to reorganize some of the departments. And the Department of Economics and Finance that was chaired by Jim Truitt was one of the larger departments. That and accounting were the largest departments in the school. And it had gotten so large that he needed to split it. And so in '85, he came back to me and said, Terry, I'd like you to consider chairing the finance department as I carve it out from economics. And we'll have a Department of Economics and a Department of Finance, Insurance, and Real Estate. We'll combine insurance and real estate with that, and I'd like you to chair that. And so, again, you don't turn Richard down. I agreed to that. And then chaired the Department of Finance, Insurance, and Real Estate until '96. So really, for those of you, you don't think about this, but in academia, at the university level, there are really two career tracks. There's the academic career track of research and writing and teaching, and there's the leadership track or administration track that a department chair, associate dean, that kind of thing. And so some people stay on one track and some split that time. So my career was ended up starting as a faculty member, moving to administration, moving back out, and then back into administration. So really, again, mentorship from a person who, again, it kind of took me under his wing and provided me leadership opportunities to grow toward that administrative track.
Yeah, and you look at that and, starting out in faculty, going to more administration, going back and forth, actually gave you the breadth of experience that you really needed to be successful as a dean. So now let's talk about your tenure as dean, these last 24 years, and some of the key accomplishments and innovations.
Well, what I'd like to do is, we're going to cue up a video, but I'd like to show you a video, about a 2.5-minute video that kind of, I think, gives you the big picture of some things that I think we've accomplished over the last 24 years, working together, myself working with our leadership team as well as our faculty and staff. And so watch the video with me, if you will. So, Bill, that gives you sort of a big picture, I think, of where we are today. But let me put some meat on the bones, if you will,
okay,
and talk specifically about some programs that have been created over the last 24 years. And really, it starts with students. And we felt like we needed to really challenge our students. And so over the past 24 years, over incremental periods of time, we raised the entry-level requirements to get into the business school. When I started as dean, you had to have at least a 2.0 to get in, unless you appealed. So we went from a 2.0 to about 3 or 4 years ago to now it's a 3.0, plus some additional kinds of requirements that we have. But we felt like that was important to challenge students to work hard and excel, and I think we've accomplished that. So I feel like a lot of the things we've been able to accomplish over this time period is because of the quality of students that are in the business school. When I started as dean, we also did not have So that was one thing we worked on students. We didn't have an alumni outreach program. And I thought at that time, I said, you know, I've got to have some organized way to get out and meet alums. And what I don't want to ever happen is for an alum to come to me and say that I'm talking to about raising money for a program or a faculty position or scholarships or something like that. I don't want that alum to say, well, where you been? I wanted them to say, well, sure, that's because of a relationship. And so we started back with the help of several people in this room, and Brenda Morris was one that really helped spearhead this effort, created the Baylor Business Network. And that program allowed us to begin to connect Baylor alums together. It allowed them to connect back to the school and us to them, and as well as connect with the university. And I just felt like having some kind of formal program where you had, you know, would bring people together would be something that would benefit the school in some fashion through time because of that network. And that was something really, really important to us. From a programmatic standpoint, over those years, engaged learning, and that term engagement, impact, going back to what I said earlier, engaged learning was really important. And so programs that we were able to create and leverage off of things that were important to us would include our specialization in healthcare in our MBA program. We feel like that's something that leveraged off of Baylor's reputation and name was an important industry for us to be in, and something Baylor was connected with for its history. And that was a natural for us, but again, we had to have the right kind of students also and attract the right kind of students into that program. Other engaged learning opportunities would be for example, our portfolio practicum that we have. So we have about $11 million portfolio that students manage, real money, and it connects with our alum base because we have alum advisors that work with those students. The way that we were able to connect with our MBA healthcare program, again, because of the network of people in hospital administration that had a Baylor connection. And so those are things that are really, I think, relevant and important to us in terms of programs. Collaboration is an important thing that has really come to be critical for the business school. We've got collaborative programs. It's important for business students to be able to work across disciplinary lines and work with people in other areas. And we've got joint programs with the Truett Seminary. We have joint programs with engineering, the law school, and social work to try to get that kind of thinking in terms with our business students, but also our business students influeing, and our business programs influencing others. There are many others I could talk about, but really I think it culminates in what happened in 2015, and that was when we were able to move into the Paul L. Foster campus for business innovation. And I'm going to show you a video in just a minute, but first let me just say that facility, why you think, what does a building do? Well, we intentionally call it a campus. It's the Paul L. Foster campus for business and innovation. It's not a building, it's not a center, it's a campus. And it was designed to build community. It was designed to provide collaborative opportunities for students. It was designed with technology in mind. It was designed to demonstrate ethics through sustainability, so it's a LEED Gold facility, and that was critical as we work with our architectures. It's supposed to have, we intended it to have a global feel, a corporate global feel. And also from a global standpoint would allow us to bring speakers from around the world to influence our students and let our students hear from. And then finally, it tells stories of our alums. We wanted our alums to be front and center with our students to give them an idea who's out there that preceded them and what they're doing out there. So our digital screens have a lot of stories about our alum bases out there. So let me relive what we lived through for 18 months of construction, and we'll play the next video.
You know, Terry, I think I told you this when you opened that campus, that campus did the same thing for the business school that McLean Stadium did for our football program.
That's right.
You know, and the science building did for the science, and the brick is done for engineering. But that was truly a turning point.
You know, it's amazing, and those of you who are in construction or contracting probably know this, but I didn't realize until you actually move in and start using it, but that environment makes all the difference. That campus really created a culture for our business program. Our students are there all the time. It gave them a place when they're not in class to come back to and collaborate and build community, get to know faculty better, get to know staff better, get to know each other better, because it's a community building space. So,
I mean, that is something that, while it has Paul's name on it, and many of us in here know Paul, it'll always be associated with you.
Well, there's a lot of people in here that have their names on it as well.
Right.
So
it's a collaborative effort. So I know you're retiring, but I'm going to put you to work here at the end of this, and want you to talk about what's the future look like, you know, as you retire for Baylor and for just business, higher education in general.
You know, where's the crystal ball? Who knows? But let me give you a perspective of how I'm looking at the future for Baylor, but also for education. And I think two things. Number one, when we brought students back to campus, the comments that we got indicated that campus life is so important to them. I'm talking about undergrad specifically, but even our graduate students, but particularly our undergrad, they said they wanted to be back on campus. So in a sense, I think this confirms one aspect of what we do at Baylor, and that is we're building community, that it's more than just going to class. You're really building character, you're really building a person by having them in that formative stage there on campus. So that cemented in for us that campus experience is really important, and that shouldn't go away. Secondly, what we saw is the power of technology, and that we were able to do part of what we can do as an educator. We can design classes, we can design learning experiences through technology. And to me, I think the future of education is the merger of those two things, where you don't lose that physical campus environment and that community building that you have, but you use the power of technology. I mean, I kind of dream and think about how can augmented reality enrich the learning experience of while you're on campus.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, what's out there in technology, it's almost you've got to remain adaptable and agile, because it's going to be changing, and things that you won't even be thinking about now will be existing for faculty to work with in terms of creating rich learning environments. So it's that combination, Bill, I think, of not losing the campus environment, but merging it in with technology to create that rich learning experience for the student.
Yeah. You know, and a lot of, you know, with Baylor initiative to become an R1 Tier 1 university, what do you think that will mean for Baylor? You know, and what has it already done for Baylor, but what it will mean for Baylor, and why is it important? Because, you know, when I was at Baylor, we had great teachers. We didn't talk much about research. Today, we have great teachers, but we're also talking a lot about research. And so, how do you see that working out?
Well, I really think, I'm one who would be a proponent and supporter of the President's initiative that's in Illuminate, moving the university toward an R1 classification, T1, you know, Tier 1, R1 classification. And I think the importance of it is that you have the research. There are two aspects of research. One aspect of it is it gets our faculty recognized, where our faculty can make a contribution, moving the frontiers of knowledge forward, and gives Baylor an opportunity to be at the table if policy issues are being discussed. If our faculty weren't doing that, we wouldn't have an influence. And I think what I want to see the Baylor of the future is to have more of an influence on the national and international scale. But also, another aspect of research that people may not be aware of is bringing students into that research environment and letting them be a part of that discovery. And goes back to innovation
exactly
and
right.
creation of things. But getting students involved in that. And so I really think that's the important part. I think President Livingstone said in her inaugural address, she said, the world needs a Baylor. And I firmly believe that. We attract and instill a value system within our students by being a faith-based educational institution. And I think that's critical for the world, and I think it's a role that Baylor needs to play and should be playing.
Yeah, I have an opportunity. I've had opportunity to see some of the undergraduate students. You always think of research, you think graduate students, but undergraduate students that are involved in research and what they're getting, and that's really now an expectation.
Yeah.
And not just a differentiator, it's an expectation. And for a private institution like Baylor, if we were just a pure teaching university at the tuition that we charge, we'd be under a lot more pressure than we are today. So there's no question about it. So Terry, it's now midnight, July the 1st. What's next for Terry Maness?
And I was mentioning this to people earlier prior to the lunch. It was, as I was thinking about retirement, and I don't really think of it as retirement, I really think of it as another phase in life or a new phase in life. But this person told me, says, Terry, someone who's retired, you shouldn't retire from something, you ought to be retiring to something. In other words, what's that next phase that you're moving into? And I don't have that exactly mapped out. Some things that I'd like to be involved in, though, I've got 5 grandchildren. I'd love to be able to be more flexible. Some of them are in town, some of them are out of town, so flexibility of remaining a part of their life would be a part of that. So my wife and I, we enjoyed traveling. We co-directed a study abroad program for 10 years while I was back on the faculty, and we'd love to we got a taste of travel at that, and we'd love to do a little bit more of that. And staying involved. I'm on a number of boards, both nonprofit as well as for-profit, and that's going to keep me engaged. So those are some things that I know about, and I'll be open for opportunities after 6 months. Give us 6 months to evaluate, but be open for opportunities because I want to stay involved and engaged. But fly fishing with my grandchildren would be something that's high on the order.
Yeah, he's already got a trip planned for May and July, so he's already going to be up there in 70-degree weather, so you're going to look forward to that. So Terry, any last words for the Baylor family as we close out today?
Yeah, go back to my parents. Again, there are things my parents couldn't provide my brother and I. They didn't have the, grand ideas about what careers. They just knew we're going to send our kids to college, and then we'll let that take care of itself. But one thing my dad really taught me, he said, Terry, whenever you borrow something, always return it in better shape than what you received it. And I look at my career at Baylor in that light, and I say that Baylor was, the business school was lent to me for a period of time. And what I hope is after the dust settles, that in retrospect you look back and say, and alums can say it, or the administration can say it, my faculty and staff can say it, that Terry returned it back to the next dean in better shape than what he found it.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt about that. You talked about 3 characteristics of a professor: engaged, and you've been engaged. Mark Flagg and Don Childress, starting the Baylor Business Network, but throughout your career been engaged. You've been innovative. All the things that we've done, and you've led, including the Paul Foster campus. But most of all, you've had an impact. A lot of people out here and online, you've had an impact. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. So
Before we scatter this afternoon, I want to recognize a few things. If you'll look on the tables, we had a strong list of table sponsors, and it's really too long to articulate, but I do appreciate every one of you who sponsored a table for this special event, and I know Terry does as well. In addition, I just want to recognize the Baylor people who are here from the university. If you're from Baylor, just raise your hand. Trey's here, and so we got a lot of people here from Baylor as well, so we thank you for coming. I'm also pleased to announce that starting this fall, our in-person events will resume. We will start our monthly bear-to-bear activities in August with an after-work event, so stay tuned to that weekly digest that you get via email. And if you don't get that weekly digest, then see me or see Tessa or see Rob, and we'll make sure you get on that list. We also, as I said, we'll start our new series, speaker series. We already have one date confirmed, and that is our new dean of Hankamer School of Business will be here for a breakfast on the morning of October the 28th here at the Junior League.
I'm so glad I got a chance for lunch instead of breakfast. So.
Well, yeah, you're better off with me interviewing you at lunch instead of breakfast too. I will tell you that for sure. So, and then also just want to remind everybody here in Houston, we do have an endowed scholarship for our Houston alumni base. It's named after Brenda Morris, who helped us start the Baylor Business Network. If you would like to give, a lot of people always say, I'd like to give to endowed scholarships, but I really am not in a position to do that at this point in time. Well, you can give any amount of money to Brenda's scholarship. We named it after her in recognition for her contribution to the Houston market. And if you want to know how to do that, talk to Rob or myself, and we'll be glad to do that.
Let me make one parting comment too. This is most of you are familiar with errors and omissions that you have. There's all kinds of omissions because you only have so much time to talk about things, but there are a number of people that are surrounding these tables, and I'm not gonna identify them, but so many of you have been involved in the programs that we've been able to create, and I've mentioned some of them, but one in particular I also want to mention is because it's an example of innovation, engagement, and impact, and it's our Baylor Angel Network, and it's something that has impact in terms of student careers, student placement, much like many of our other programs, but it's one that I failed to mention but wanted to because so many in this room have helped not only create the program but have kept it going and see the value in it. And the mentorship, Bill, that has been created between, and I think that's indicative of many of our programs, the mentorship that's involved with our alums and our students, the career opportunities, and then really, quite honestly, there's financial impact too, because the opportunity for that Baylor Angel Network, those investments that are being made to come back, but the rich learning experience, you can't put a price on it that the students have. And the impact that it has on them. Much like Bill, the healthcare program is the same way. Just the impact that getting students out there working with and engaged with entrepreneurs, healthcare providers, financiers, all of that. And that's really, I think, the hallmark of the program.
I agree. To see the students do all the deal flow, the deal analysis, and the mentor, the angels will mentor them, but they're on top of it. The angels don't have to do much.
Thanks for letting me
great.
add that.
Oh, yeah. So again, thank you for coming today. We look forward to seeing you in the fall. And just a couple of things I want to remind you about, and that is that Baylor is the reigning national champions of men's basketball, as well as acrobatics and tumbling. So with saying that, sick 'em Bears.